Great.
I just turned on recording, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I did.
Diane, do you want to introduce yourself?
You're muted, Diane, sorry.
I live in Southwest Portland, and we have a little group here that are working with a small group of 3 that live in a bad situation underneath a bridge. And we've been sort of coordinating and trying to help them for quite a few months. And I have visited Cascadia houses. I just think they're terrific. And Andy has done so much. I believe completely in grassroots, and I say that we neighbors need to come up with some solutions and share the space and the volunteer work and the money. I also think government needs to step up, and I think our city government has just let the homelessness become an overwhelming problem. And I would volunteer. I can't do anything with music. I could maybe help provide meals, so I could maybe work with Anna. Thank you very much. That's all.
Great. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us. Okay. We've got Joanne with us. Joanne,
Hello.
hi. I like your tree.
Yeah, sorry, that was last week. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late, and I might need to jump off because I'm waiting for someone to tell me I need to go pick them up. So sorry to jump late.
Oh, Joanne is our secretary on the board. All right, and I'm Chris Tanner. I'm the treasurer, unbelievably, and my pronouns are she, her. And I think I can now introduce our speakers. I don't think I've missed anyone. So we're fortunate to have with us 2 people who are the co-owners of Feed the People PDX, which is a nonprofit that they started. We were trying to figure out how many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. They met working for a household service organization in town doing outreach for them, and then the grant got finished and they missed their houseless friends. So they started up their own firm to be able to go out and deliver things to the people that they had developed all these relationships with. So they'll tell you about that, tell you about what they've learned, give us some guidance for those of us that are wishing to do more outreach. And know we will be doing outreach as we welcome the houseless folks into our neighborhood and the villages. So Katie, you want to say any more about yourself? Katie is a they, them, right? Cody is a she, her.
Hi, my name's Katie. I use they, them pronouns. I'm one of the founders of Feed the People PDX. And for those of you who don't know, I grew up in Sullivan's Gulch. I've known Jan my whole life, and Chris is my mom. So doesn't get a whole lot more local than that. But yes, as Chris was saying, Cody and I started Feed the People PDX a number of years ago. We've both worked in social services for some time. I've been in homeless services for about 7 years. Really enjoyed a lot of different types of work within this field, from outreach, which is my favorite, to mental health crisis counseling, specifically working with homeless adults in shelter settings, to now being a program manager for several different COVID-related homeless service locations. So 2 different shelters that were specifically set up for the COVID-19 pandemic response. And I will pass it over to Cody to tell you a little bit about her.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for having us. This is such a inspiring project, and the PowerPoint was really good. My name is Cody. I use she, her pronouns, or they, them. I met Katie 5 years ago, I think, when we were hired on to start an outreach program for a local nonprofit. Previously, we had both worked at the Syringe Exchange at Outside In, but had no real knowledge of each other because we worked on different days. And I think we collectively worked there like over a decade. It's a long time. Like we were both there for a long time and had never met, which is bananas because Katie's my best friend now. But at any rate, we got hired on to develop this project to connect folks in the community with local resources, sign them up for OHP, and offer them basic supplies, socks, water, any snacks we can carry. But the emphasis was more on getting them connected to urgent medical services such as abscess care and anything else that you can incur living outside. As Chris was saying, the program ended after a year for a lot of reasons, and Katie and I, after a couple months, were like, well, screw it, let's just keep going. Like, our people are still outside. They still need all the things that we need to survive. And we started volunteering. And I mean, it was partially, just whatever we could provide out of our pockets, and some, we had an Amazon wish list, which we still operate from, but it's, everything that we get, we give out. And so it was just very much just like a way of us connecting with people that we had known for years. I mean, I've been working in community mental health in a variety of capacities for 10 years now. And, a lot of folks that use drugs and who have mental health concerns and houselessness, that Venn diagram, turns into one circle at a certain point. So, we run into people that we've known, like, people that I met over a decade ago, which is wild, like we still run into people from all different points of our lives. And it's both kind of sweet to be able to connect with people when we do, but it's also so heartbreaking because of the ways that we see our people. And yeah, I agree with, a lot of, and want to echo a lot of things that have been said. There's a real need for, there's a real need, full stop, but I think, local government and communities need to put more effort into supporting folks that live outside and not, kind of turning a blind eye and just, not my problem. It's like, no, it's all of our problems. It's we need to support our people. One thing I love about this, though, is just the integration of different volunteer groups and the ways that the design of the program is set up to support everyone, and to not only the folks that are being housed in these small communities, but also like the folks that live around these communities. Because I think that's one of the big concerns is sort of like the neighborhoods, like, having folks that live outside, brings a lot of stigma, brings a lot of, garbage, a lot of drama, a lot of, criminal activity sometimes, and like a lot of different things that make people nervous. And so I think it's really cool the way that you're kind of trying to get a diversity of people on these teams to sort of help support the folks who utilize these services, and also connect with the people in these communities who live in these neighborhoods, rather, to build those alliances, because I think there's too much of a division between housed and unhoused folks in Portland. So anyway, not to ramble on about that, but that was something that really struck me, because I was like, that is the bridge that's missing. There's a lot of outreach groups in Portland through various faith-based organizations and nonprofits and folks giving out sandwiches like Katie and I that just, when we have time. But the work to break down those barriers and the stigma between housing and is, I think, the work that is most desperately needed, and like sort of reminding folks of humanity and people's humanity, and I don't know. Anyway, not to ramble, but There was a question I think you were asking in there, Chris. I don't remember what it was. I hope I answered it.
I actually don't remember the question, but I think telling us how you all got started or something to that effect. So I
Yeah.
think you've helped us understand that a bit.
Okay.
Okay.
I can talk a tiny bit more about our current operations.
Yeah.
So, as Cody mentioned, we're super excited that y'all are doing this work, and we're here to, we're pretty, I don't know if you can tell from our appearance, but like fairly informal people. So we mostly want to tell you a little bit about the stuff that we give a real big shit about, and also hear what you guys are passionate about and what your questions are and how we can provide support. We would love for this to be a relationship that continues on beyond this particular conversation, and just know that we are a resource for y'all as you dig into this project and as things come up. So we want to talk about safety. We want to talk about culture. We want to answer all of the questions that you've been embarrassed to ask. And we want to tell you a little bit about our experience, both the really ugly, hard parts, and also the things that make it worth it. So one thing we love about your approach is that it is a community organized, yes, in my backyard moment that y'all are having. As a person with lived experience of mental illness and a person who is in long-term recovery from addiction, having people in a community show care for people who have parallel lived experience to my own means a lot. It's one thing to provide services with strings attached, like attending church or being sober or taking meds. And then there's a totally different aspect of community care, mutual aid, and like unconditional positive regard for other human beings. Treating our unhoused neighbors as our neighbors is honestly the most important part or the most important thing we can bring to the table when doing this work. And so we're really excited to hear that is your philosophy of neighborhood inclusion and community responsibility for those most vulnerable in our communities. One thing that, a lot of people don't feel like homelessness could happen to them, but we've seen it, especially during the pandemic, happen to people who never plans on not working, have been in the same job for 15 years, didn't ever see themselves going into major debt, but like a car accident or a broken leg or, a particularly nasty bout of any sort of illness can take people from feeling really stable to being really close to that edge. And a lot of times that's what we see. A divorce can land someone on the streets, not being able to pay child support due to a job loss, a misunderstanding that goes too far and leaves somebody with a criminal charge. All of those things can prevent people from getting into housing, maintaining the housing they already have, or in any other way, like maintaining their support network. So people who never expected to be homeless, very few people are like, when I grow up, I'm going to be homeless. I actually was one of those people because I was really interested in the Boxcar Kids. That was like my number one jam, was the book series, The Boxcar Kids. A lot of my friends were reading Babysitter's Club and American Girl. I was all about the Boxcar Kids. I loved their sense of independence. I loved their not having parents. I'm not really sure why I thought it was a fun and glamorous idea to grow up to be homeless orphans, but it was something I was interested in because I am a very independent person, and I have always cared deeply about those around me and wanted to understand what their experience was. So most people don't really, they grow up being like, I want to be a doctor, an astronaut, or whatever. Very few of us grow up being like, I want to live in a tent. I want to be criminalized for not having bathroom access and having to use a bathroom in a public space. I want to be an addict and struggle every day to get my needs met and have people around me think that I am evil or bad or wrong. And I want to grow up and think those things about myself too. That's not really a thing. And I think having some understanding and compassion about how people become homeless and the barriers once someone is homeless to becoming housed, having a really realistic understanding of those things, I think is really important when we're coming to the table to build solutions. If we don't understand the problems that exist, it's really pretty impossible to come up with creative solutions to those problems. So that's a little bit of a blurb. Cody and I are also prone to ranting. So grandstanding and ranting, let us know if you have questions or if we're talking too long. We're happy to be interrupted, and we encourage it.
Could you tell us a little bit more about like how often you're going out, what kinds of things you're taking with you, where you're going, that kind of thing right now? Currently.
So part of our desire to engage with our communities and part of what we're doing is we want to understand the need, right? So I've talked a little bit about the context of some of the folks that we're seeing. And one thing that we do is it's really important to us to go and try really hard to meet the needs in places where there aren't services available. So we don't go downtown. There are a lot of outreach providers, a lot of resources. Most homeless services access exists in the downtown corridor. So we see really visible homelessness there. We see really visible addiction, substance use, mental health, all of that in that downtown corridor, which is a well-known area that has a lot of visible homelessness. Cody and I don't go there. There's plenty of services there. There's not enough services for anyone anywhere, but that's where services are concentrated. We mostly go really far north Portland. We go to Delta Park. We go to Hayden Island. We go way out east Portland. We go deep southeast, Springwater corridor area. We go to the places that are not very glamorous, that feel kind of unsafe. We go to places that are, for lack of a better word, a big eyesore. We go to places where people are not having the ability to access services that they need. And the biggest service that we can provide as two random dudes walking up to a camp is compassion, kindness, humanity. We bring sandwiches, we bring water, all of those things. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the supplies that we bring with us. But the most important thing we bring with us is time, is space, is a genuine desire to connect, and is non-judgmental, radically kind service. We have no agenda. We have no strings attached. You don't have to be nice to us. We don't expect you to say thank you. We should be thanking you for the opportunity to show up and have a moment where we get to be of service to our community. So that's our philosophy going into this. Having worked in nonprofit, both of us, for a long time, a combined total of almost 20 years or something like that. That's wild.
Way too long.
So long for us, because we are both actual babies. Doing this, we've always, like, in nonprofit, and for any of you who've worked in nonprofit, you know this to be true. The answer to any question is no. The answer is always no. Like, can I do? No. It's always about rationing resources. It's about like figuring out how we can maintain, and operating from a scarcity mindset is not a way to provide trauma-informed care. We operate from an abundance mindset. If we have it, you can have it. One thing that was really hard was we had quotas and limits in previous work of like how much time we can spend with people, how many like contacts we have to make in a day, goals for like performance, and like how many pairs of socks a person can have. That's ridiculous. And that's not the ethics and the values that we bring to this work. I have more than enough socks. You can have 2 pairs. Like, that's not going to break my budget. And so a big part of what's different with our organization and how we function is that, like, yes, we are run out of my garage. We have a bunch of recycling bins full of socks, but we don't tell people, no, you can't have this, or you've had too much. We give people what they ask for, as much as we have of it that they need. And we trust people to make their own decisions and have agency, and tell us what their needs are and see how we can fulfill those needs. So that's just a little bit more about our philosophy and how we operate. Cody, do you want to talk a little bit about the kits that we put together? I could maybe go grab one and show it off while you're talking.
Sure. Yeah. So before COVID, when we would go out, we literally fill Katie's car with supplies, like boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff, and usually go until we run out, like clear out. With COVID, because of the 6-foot kind of social distancing sort of guidelines, the ways that we used to operate were unsafe. So we would go out and have these big, like kind of these big medical supply bags of like all sorts of things, from basic hygiene, soap, shampoo, Q-tips, combs, hair ties, these sorts of things, to food, all sorts of snacks, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, little cups of fruit, or fruit snacks, and granola bars, just like a bounty, a plentiful, massive bounty. And like we would just give it out, and people would come up sort of a la carte and take whatever they want. But because of the 6-foot social distancing guidelines, we had to start putting together kits that sort of had a sampling of all of these things, just because obviously, you know, in the beginning, it was unclear how the contagion spread or what was safe, you know, before vaccinations were even an idea. We were still, I mean, we've been doing this through the whole pandemic. We go out every week. And so, you know, in order for us to continue working full time and going out every week, it's like we had to figure out a way to sort of streamline operations. Also, so that we didn't put our people that we're meeting at risk in case we were asymptomatic carriers, you know, which is something that I didn't have any scientific information about, but was terrified and caused me a lot of personal anxiety. So our workaround was that we would get a gallon Ziploc bag and put, ta-da, basically one of everything in it, including socks. Oh my God, are we doing, okay. Yeah, we like masks, hand sanitizer, baby wipes is a big one. Baby wipes, I mean, can be used for so many different things. And people always need more of them. Trash bags are huge. And, you know, there's a misnomer about folks that live outside being very dirty and unclean. The majority of our experience is that it gets that way because they don't have access to trash bags. Folks go out of their way to ask for extra trash bags. We've connected with the Rosehip Collective through the Q Center, a local grassroots nurse medic organization that was putting together homemade hand sanitizer. And when we would get in touch with them, and they'd give us 300 bottles and a bunch of homemade masks, and just like, you know, to give out to folks that are still connecting with folks living outside. And so, yeah, we also, I just saw the hand warmers, another big seller. Yeah, so I mean, these things, you know, as Katie was saying, we operate from an abundance mindset and give out as much as is needed. You know, a little tiny thing of hand sanitizer. What am I looking at here? Okay, oh, these are all of our snacks. Okay, so, okay. Couple things about snacks. We always offer two sets, either crunchy or soft. A lot of folks that live outside have some dental concerns and or few teeth that are, you know, they prefer softer snacks, let's say that. So we give out like pudding cups, we give out fruit, like applesauce, fruit cups, the softer kind of like Nutri-Grain bars. Crunchy snacks are usually crackers and what else with like mixed nuts. There are other things we give out, but we make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every time we go out, like at least 3 bread loaves worth, and just give them out until they're gone. But anyway, all those things in a bag, and we give people bags, and we bring extra stuff. Generally, okay, big one. Sorry. We also make little medical kits. Thank you. The star of the show. The medical supplies include Q-tips, various sizes of Band-Aids, triple antibiotic ointment, and alcohol wipes. Bigger medical kits include gloves, gauze, tape. For folks living outside, this is gold. Like, people usually need extras. And during the pandemic, it was even harder for folks to access medical care because of the overworked medical system trying to respond to this public health emergency. So, we give as many of those out as we can, and always bring extra bags of stuff. So if people are like, oh, I want a kit and extra pair of socks or an extra sandwich, or my friend's coming, can I get 2 kits? Just give it out. One thing that's really cool, as Katie was saying before, is that with the previous program that we developed through the nonprofit, it was something that we had to be very cautious about because our budget was really tight. And like, we had to say like, no, you can't have an extra pair of socks, or no, like, sorry, 1 per person, that sort of thing. And now being able to say like, oh, you want 5 pairs of socks? Sure. Like, we have that. Like, if you want it, sure. I'm not going to assume to know what your lived experience has been or the challenges you faced. And if you need an extra couple sandwiches, like, that's the least we can do, really. And so at first it was like such a novelty of just being like, yeah, you can have half a loaf of sandwiches if you have a big camp. If you're the representative of your big camp, the only one who's home right now, and you got folks that are out doing what they do, whatever that is, and they're going to come back later and want to eat, yeah, take extras. And not having to say, like, turn that down or challenge that in any way. It's like, no, it's none of my business. If they ask for it, they can have it. And the response from folks has actually been notable, because I think that they are also familiar with nonprofits that operate from that's the previous standpoint, where it's like, no, sorry, 1 per person. My hands are tied. I wish I could, and we're like, nah, whatever. So those kits have been they're great for a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, when folks don't need things, they give it out to other folks in the community. Sometimes we include, things like sewing kits, and if they don't need it, they give it to someone who does. Like toothbrush, toothpaste, again, if they don't need it, they give it to someone who does. Like, there's a real community that I think people, and a real caring amongst people who live outside, that I think gets lost. That narrative gets lost in a lot of the conversation about houseless folks in Portland. But yeah, that's what we've been doing. I think earlier, like maybe a couple months ago, we spent February just putting kits together. I think we made like 300 or 400 of them or something. It was a lot of assembly line work, but ultimately it was great because we had so many to give out that we didn't have to worry about like running out too soon in the day, or like, making sure we got all the, we'd fill up 2 giant boxes and go out, and, that's a few hours worth of, connecting with people. So, any questions about the kits? I said a lot of words really quickly just now. I realize I should probably take tabs on, yeah, what's up?
Well, I just wanted to ask about something I've been thinking about, because I've been out with a few people doing outreach now, and I know it's sort of the standard thing that you want to be giving something out to people, whether it's food or a kid or something. But I'd like to talk to you a little, or hear a little bit more about your conversations with people, and how you're able, or if you're able, to get beyond the sort of surface stuff and get deeper with people. Can you talk about that at all?
Sure. So I alluded to this earlier, but one of the things that is really important to us is that there are no strings attached. And so like, people don't have to be nice to us. We owe our neighbors so much. as people with stable housing, as people with, income, as people who have our basic needs met on a daily basis. Like I have so much to share and I don't need anything from you. And so we don't ask people's names. We don't ask them to like share their stories with us. One thing that's pretty different about our operation is, a lot of folks who do this kind of work will have a social media presence where they'll showcase the people that they're working with and share stories. And we really don't do that. We don't ever take pictures of the people that we work with. We don't share any of their stories with any kind of specifics. We might say something like, here's a picture of the dog. And, we saw someone we haven't seen in a long time. It was really exciting to hear that they finally have access to methadone treatment, or, they have an interview with an apartment or whatever. And a huge part of that is just like, we show up, we get to be familiar faces, and we don't ask anything in return.
Okay.
So like, I'm not entitled to somebody's name. I'm not entitled to their story. I'm just here to hand them a sandwich because I have some to share. And I think that that is something people really appreciate, is that there's no expectation. Like you don't have to say thank you to me. You can be like, fuck off, lady. And I'll be like, okay, great. I hope you have a good day. Like, and I mean that. Like, I mean it when I say, I hope you have a good day. I hope you stay safe. You take care now. Nice to see you. All those things. And we just show up as ourselves, without expectation. And a lot of times folks are really lonely. They're very, very socially isolated. They're accustomed to being erased and treated as though they're invisible, all day, every day. And so when somebody shows up and is like, hey, we have some snacks, are you interested? Or like, hey, it's a really hot day and I've got a cooler full of ice cold water. Can I get you something? A lot of times people will start talking to us and we don't have to ask them questions. At most we'll kind of be like, hey, it's nice to see you. How you been? Or just like, how's it going? What can I get for you? The most common question we ask is, how many people do you stay with? So that they know, like, we don't believe in policing. We're like very abolitionist ourselves. And we don't believe in dictating what people need or deciding for them, anything. A lot of times people don't want anything that we're handing out, and that's totally fine. It's not personal. And like, again, they don't owe us anything. So it's less about like it's less about like starting an engagement or like trying to seek out a connection, and more about just showing up and offering and being open. A lot of times we'll ask somebody like, what's your dog's name? Or like, can I pet them? Does your dog do treats, or should I give them to you? Like, is your dog going to bite my hand off? And a lot of times just showing up with something to offer and nothing that we're asking for, people are willing to tell us like, hey, oh, it's nice to see you, because we're familiar. Like, we've been doing this for a long time. People know us, but even people who don't know us will like start telling us like, oh yeah, I just ended up out here. Like, my girlfriend took all our money and gambled it, and now like, here I am. Or like, I just got my kids taken away, but I have a meeting with my caseworker tomorrow that I'm like really trying to stay sober for. Things like that. People will volunteer information because they're looking for a connection. When we treat our neighbors as our equals, as our peers, as our community members, instead of as an eyesore or a trouble or a blight or some sort of like, when we don't villainize people or look down on them, when we just meet them literally and figuratively, like where they're at, with kindness and openness and no agenda, then people are a lot more likely to open up. And like, that's a real privilege and a gift of what we get to do. And it's not the goal. Like, we don't have a goal. The goal is just like, give people sandwiches, be nice, show somebody that we give a shit. Like we're just two guys and we care. And that's it. And being able to show up and like have that unconditional positive regard and just genuinely abundant care and kindness and openness allows us to make connections with people who are not interested in connecting with service providers, who've been deeply traumatized by systems, especially law enforcement or legal systems, people who like aren't able to maintain in shelter settings that have a lot of rules or structures. We just get to show up and give you a lunch and, you know, maybe some dog food, or if you need a pair of gloves, I might have some in the car, that kind of thing. Mostly we're just happy to see people and they're happy to see us. And that's really like the joy of it, is that we don't make anyone talk to us. We don't make them do anything. We allow them to engage with us how they would like to and however feels comfortable for them. And we're just like overjoyed about the opportunity to show up and be there. So that's what I would say is like, I know I've harped on it, but really going in without an agenda and without any expectations is the way that we have found that opens the door for us to have like really sweet interactions and get to know people. So there's a lot of folks out there that we've known for years and we don't know their names and they don't know our names, but we love them. And we're like, God, can't wait to see that dog. Can't wait to see that guy with the, you know, whatever it is that he has. Like whatever, I don't know, that guy with the blue hair, whatever. Yeah, Dave, I see you having your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to have a question. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. It's you're a great resource for what we're trying to do. My question right now is, so you give them these care packages and food, which is great, but what about things to keep them dry, like tarps and tents and things of that nature? I'm just curious if you have things to give them like that, or what kind of solutions you can offer for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have those things when they're donated. So one thing is about us is like, because we're not a 501c3, we don't receive any grant funding. That means we don't have to report anything we do. We can do whatever we want. And one of the things that is really exciting is just asking community members, like, what do you have to offer? Or what ideas do you have? I was just going through, I get sentimental, and I was going through our Instagram yesterday and just like looking at all of the ways that different people have shown up for us and given to us and allowed us to do this work. So whether that's like 7 cases of beef jerky that appeared on my porch, or whether that's a tent that has a small hole and like this person wanted a new one, like rather than throwing it out or taking it to the Goodwill, they hit me up and were like, do you want this? And we got to give that tent to somebody. I think we have 2 or 3 tents in my garage right now. We've got a stack of tarps. You know, people will let us know. There was a Fred Meyer on Foster that closed, and my friend Courtney that Cody and I used to work with at a former job texted me and was like, all of the camping gear is 60% off. I got 10 tarps for you. And so then we have cash on hand that we can go and purchase those things. But our main object is to do these little kits. The medical supplies are the most important thing, other than just compassion, that we're able to hand out, and water. So we do have those other things that we can hand out when they are available, but we don't receive any federal, state, county, city, any type of funding, any grants. So it's all community sourced, and we typically choose to spend our money the way that it will go the farthest, which for the most people, which is often socks and water rather than tents and tarps. But we love a good deal. We love a bargain. And I think we've got like 3 tents, stack of tarps, and 2 or 3 sleeping bags that have all been donated by community members. And we love to pass those out. It totally makes somebody's day. And with sweeps happening, I see your hand, Diane, so give me 1 sec. With the sweeps take place, a lot of times people's property, like all they have in the world, gets destroyed or taken. thrown in a dumpster, hit with a box cutter so that the sides don't hold out the air or the cold anymore. And being able to show up and be like, I actually have something for you. Like, I can give you this. Total game changer for folks. Unfortunately, something that's not super sustainable for our teeny tiny operation, but we love when we get that opportunity. So thank you. Good question. Diane, what you got?
Well, just what you said about the sweeps.
Mm-hmm.
I had some other questions, but what you just said about the sweeps is horrible.
Yes.
The police destroy stuff?
Yes.
I did not know that.
So there is a team called the Homelessness and Urban Camping Impact Reduction Team, HUCCRP. And it's a city team that responds to campsites that have been reported. It's a city-county collaboration, and they clear those campsites. And it is something that we extremely strongly oppose. We think it's a human rights violation as well as a public health nightmare. We are deeply anti-sweeps. They solve nothing. They are violent. They are theft, and they harm people constantly. So we are very anti-sweep, and Portland loves to sweep. Sweeps disappear people. They do not disappear problems. So if you'd like to learn more about sweeps, there is a lot of information online, and we can share some links with Chris to distribute to you guys as well. But there's a lot of information available if you look at, if you just Google it. Dave.
Yeah.
Dave B. You're muted, hon.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I just wanted to make sure I didn't hear something wrong. Diane, you indicated that it sounded like the police were the ones that were doing the camps, but
Doing this week?
that was just explained. It's not the police, but it's city people. The police get a bad rap as it is.
Oh, city, from what department?
They're contractors. Central City Concern does some, no, it's the rapid response people are the people who actually deal with the camps.
So there are a number of entities involved, and unfortunately, police do often end up being called out to assist rapid response, who are the people that do that on the ground work. You're right. HUCCRP, the Homelessness and Urban Camping Impact Reduction Program, decides where things will be swept, and they do that in collusion is the word I'm going to use, with the sheriff's department, as well as city police. So
Yeah, and just
Well,
A small point. Thanks.
oh, sorry.
I
Go ahead, Diane. Sorry.
I volunteer at a place down in Northwest where there's so much camping on the streets, huge amounts, and they are usually, I have been told many times, warned ahead of times. Is that right?
Yeah.
That they might be warned a day in advance, and I don't know whether that's just on the streets or whether it's in the camps.
Yes, yeah, that is true. They will post, generally they'll put up postings around campsites that have been reported saying, on this date, this camp will be removed. Please move, clean up your things and move before then. But with folks who live outside, sometimes they don't have the means to track time or days, or they have other concerns that are more important. One thing I did want to add to what Katie was saying is that when folks are swept previously, before the pandemic, the sheriff's department was known to use the the labor of incarcerated people to sweep these camps. It was something that we find exceptionally appalling because so many homeless
Oh,
folks
that's
are
cruel.
incarcerated. So it's people who are homeless sweeping people who are homeless. It's like somehow even more insidious and vicious in terms of intent and execution. It is just, it's something that doesn't make sense to us. And it just seems like rubbing salt in a wound that is just never healing. And so it isn't always that way, but for a while, this is a trend that we noticed, you know, these groups of people that were, you know, and they'll say like, I can't remember exactly the term that's on the side of these vans, but indicating that these are teams of incarcerated people that are sweeping these camps. And I can only imagine the horror that these people are feeling as their camp is being swept by people they might know. You know, people in their, you know, that friends of theirs or you know, acquaintances or whatever, people that they've known in the unhoused community. And just kind of the brutality of that gesture. But there's one thing I wanted to add, sorry, to go back a couple steps. Janet, I wanted to respond to your question about engagement, because this is something important. When we were doing outreach for the program we sort of piloted initially, the supplies we had were very limited, and we had a quota of people, like a number that we had to sign folks up for OHP because a lot of our funding came from OHA, and there was like, we wanted to get people the medical care they needed and get folks signed up for Medicaid. And for folks that don't live outside, and for folks that are unfamiliar with the lived experience, they didn't understand why folks did not want to engage with us if we came up offering nothing. They're like, well, you know, you're signing them up for healthcare. Like, who doesn't want that? I'm like, well, they don't, we're not entitled to their time. We're not entitled to any information about them. As Katie was saying, a lot of them have fears around government and distrust of nonprofits and faith-based groups for a lot of different reasons. People have trauma histories that are so complex and deep-rooted. And if they've been chronically houseless, you know, they have no reason to trust that we're coming in with good intentions. And that's a brutal thing to kind of sit with and be like, how do I prove this to you? You know, and some, you know, not to say that the way I'm not bribing people with food or snacks, but sometimes it's easy to get attention when you've got snacks, because who doesn't like snacks? I will always talk to somebody if they offer me food first. I'm very food motivated. I am a literal dog. That's how I operate. And I was like, when, you know, we offer food to folks, or, you know, things that we want, sometimes people tell us to go away, and then they hear that we have otter pops in the summer and they come running right back, and suddenly they really want to talk to us. And like, I don't take offense either way, but knowing, you know, as Katie said, coming in with an open heart, they don't see that. They see us as nonprofit workers. They see us as social workers. You know, maybe they have trauma with case managers from the past, and they, you know, they're like, to hell with you. But coming in and just asking, how's your day going? Most of the time they'll say, you know, or like they will very readily tell you how their day is going. Some people, we've had people that are like, who wants to know? A little bit more paranoid. I'm like, whoa, I'm just pleasantries, man, just pleasantries, just no, like, and you know, and they will let you know where their comfort is with it. But I think that's the thing, is coming in and understanding that what the perception of what they need and want is very rarely informed by their voices saying what they need and want, right? So like, understanding that they may tell you to go away is something we routinely encounter. But anyway, that just sort of stood out to me, is that again, that disconnect between housed and unhoused folks, and sort of like, well, why wouldn't they want to talk to us? We have these services. Like, they want to live their lives on their own, and a lot of them feel denied autonomy and want to be left alone. And so that's a real thing. So anyway, not to belabor the point, but I just wanted to speak to that, because that was something that struck me as, and it's a good question. So any other questions people are sitting with?
Dave.
Yeah, Dave Weaver again. So I'm guessing you're familiar with WeShine's model and how we're going about this, which is that we're looking for vacant lots, vacant parking lots all around the city. We feel that every neighborhood should find 2 or 3 of these locations that we can put. We're thinking of them as managed micro villages. And I guess I'm curious, based on your experience, if you feel like our model is realistic, and how it will work and what advice you have for us, basically. That's what I want to ask.
Thanks, Dave. That's a really great question. One thing that struck me about your model that I feel like is very exciting is that it is something that I think could grow a lot. So if you have these like 2 to 3 pilot sites and it goes well, like so much of this work is just learn from doing it. And there's, we're here to answer your questions, but we don't know a lot more than you do. Maybe a little, but not a lot. And, the people who know the most are the people who are living there, are the people with that lived experience. So I love to hear that you guys are looking to diversify your board and include more people with lived experience, and that you're hiring camp life coordinators with lived experience. That's very cool. I love that because those folks know what they need a lot more than people who have a comfy bed at night know what they need. We really love the self-governed camp model. We see that at Right to Dream too. You see it at this different C3PO campuses. Hazelnut Grove, we've had the opportunity to go and visit and meet people there. And it allows people to build their own community like with their own values, and they get to define like how people show up and participate in that community. And that's something that's really cool. And doing that in these like smaller groups, that's more like a family. That's more like, how can we learn to work together and come up with a creative problem solving, all of that. It feels sustainable, because it's a number of small things. So financially, that does present a challenge in that, like, we all know buying in bulk is more cost efficient than buying a little bit at a time. And that's also why we have really overcrowded sardine shelters. That's why we have prisons the way that they are, because it costs less to cram more people into places. So allowing people, something that we've seen, and specifically that I've seen working in shelter during the pandemic, is with social distancing norms enforced, like people actually have space to stretch their arms out and like not touch another person. And that has done wonders for people's ability to de-escalate their own selves, to manage and feel more independent. All of that. And so having a community-oriented, self-driven and directed space that is intentional, that has community agreements, all of this stuff that also is small, is total game changer. It's huge. I think that it's very significant and will be really meaningful and workable for the people who are staying there. I do think you will have financial challenges with it, but I think it's really cool and it's really important. And it's something that is not as like scary or intimidating or overwhelming for a neighborhood to take on. 6 people is a lot different than 120 people. We have a lot of shelters that pre-pandemic were hovering right around the 90 to 120. And that it feels really hard for neighbors to sign up for. We have compassion for that. We know it's hard, but something like 6 to 12, that feels a lot different. And there's more chance that you can build a relationship if you're an ongoing volunteer, like getting to know those folks. So that's something that I'm really excited about. with your project.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I think as we do it, we'll work with you guys and other people that have a lot of experience, and including people that have the lived experience, to kind of adjust as we go to make sure it continues to work. But right now it's definitely challenging finding the initial locations, because the word I'm using a lot these days is courage. I just feel like a lot of people don't have the courage to take the plunge. And almost everybody I talk to says, this is a great idea, I really support you, but I'm not going to help. And I think you guys made mention of something like that too. Talk is cheap, and taking the actual plunge is going to be a challenge. I just want to say really quick, I have come up with this concept called the gumball effect, which I think I came up with. But basically, like a gumball machine, imagine a bunch of gumballs and it's kind of jammed and you can't get the first one out. But once they come out, they all come out. And I think that that's what's happening with this, is the first couple of gumballs, which is like the villages, are hard to come out because everyone's afraid. They don't really know what they're getting into. But once it starts to happen, we feel like it'll become so successful that everybody's going to be clamoring to add them in their neighborhoods. And the other thing, I'm going to add this one little thing. I foresee a competition among churches to have them in their parking lots, because whoever does it, whoever has the courage to do it, it's going to make them look really good. And they're going to be able to tout it in the news media, and it's going to get news articles about it, and it's going to give good publicity to that church that they've got it in their parking lot. And all the other churches are going to be like, wait a second, why don't we have this in our parking lot? So that's kind of another part of the gumball effect. I'm going to stop talking, but I wanted to share that.
May it be so.
Indeed. Other questions?
Diane has one, I think.
Oh, good.
Is it okay if I ask more? I'm a newcomer, so I just have. Okay, so let me make a couple of. You said something about unconditional positive regard. That is such a wonderful concept that's been around forever. People who were teachers like me, oh God, we knew how important that was. And then I am so many decades older than you. I used to read books called The Boxcar Children. Is that the same set of books? Oh my God, I can't believe they've been around for so long. That's wonderful. Well, my question has to do with what you are doing now with Springwater Corridor and Delta Park and that place. Those are the huge places. And as you suggest, those are places where maybe people don't want to be in a community. They want to just be on their own. Their mental traumas, etc., are so overwhelming. So do you just go to those places with all of those hundreds of folks and walk among them and talk to them and offer them socks and meds and such?
So we do. There are one thing Cody mentioned, kind of having to adjust our practices to accommodate for COVID and social distancing. And so one thing we do is we right now are operating under, we only go to one camp at a time. So this week we'll go to, there's like a spot, near the exit on the way to Target at Jansen Beach that has, it's like by the park and ride. And it's got like these 3 separate camps that are all really close together and everyone interacts. So we'll go there, but we won't go to 92nd and Foster this week, because if we were to become carriers, we don't want to be vectors for disease between different camps. So we used to go and take like 9 hours and do outreach all day long, all over the town. And that's not what we're doing But yes, so what we used to see were smaller camps scattered a little bit. But during the pandemic, those sweeps that I talked about earlier have been reduced based on CDC guidance. Portland's getting ready to ramp up the sweeps again. And one thing that we've seen during the pandemic is that there have still been sweeps. So if anyone tells you there haven't, that's not true. There's still been sweeps, but for nuisance camps, which could be any camp that a person reports multiple times. But people have been able to, there's a camp in my neighborhood that we go to a lot where they have a vegetable garden that they've built, like just on the side of the street. They have a vegetable garden. They grow tomatoes and zucchinis and they grill them on a tiny barbecue grill together and share communal meals. And like, people are building homes for themselves in the ways that they can, the ways they know how, with the resources and space they have available to them. Those people will get swept because their camps are too big. They're not following social distancing. But like, these are the places that people know to go and to create community and all of that. Cody says she's having internet problems, but she'll be back. But that's the places that people know to be, is to like build these small neighborhoods with each other and take care of one another. And so we're excited to see that happen in these little village models as well. Well, it looks like Dave Weaver is also having connective issues. So yeah, typically camps aren't as large as 100. Sometimes, like, because during the pandemic camps have gotten much larger, we'll see 30, 40 people like in a day. And often a lot of people are not home when we go. Many people work, they have jobs, or they do task, gig labor, return cans and bottles, things like that. Or they're out like getting whatever needs met that they have, whether that's food, whether that is substances, whether that's an appointment. So we always ask, how many people do you stay with? And we leave stuff for all of those people. So yeah, we do see pretty big groups, and we also see pretty small groups. What else can I answer for you? What else you got, DJ?
You're muted, DJ, sorry.
I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit and ask you for your opinion.
I love to give it.
Okay. And for what we're paying for it, it's going to be great advice. So we're going to have the opportunity here to speak to policymakers. And one of the questions I know that I would ask if I was in their shoes is, what do you think your probability of convincing people to come into these tiny villages is? I mean, people that have lived experience, how successful have they been in getting people to give up the life and move into a setting, even if it is low barrier, quote, given the trust issues that are out there? What do you think that success ratio, or the amount of time that it might take to convince people to come in to an alternative setting, to give up living where they are? It's kind of the devil you know question, for something new. And what could we do in addition to that? What could we do to make that an easier step for them to take, in order, in other words, earn their trust? I'm a little bit, without pointing fingers or saying anything pejorative, but when you go online and look at some of the comments that the houseless community has towards faith-based shelters, it's not very kind. And so I'm just wondering, since we've got a faith-based model, that's a key, part of our one of our partners here. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to get clear. Do you have a faith-based model, or do you have faith-based partners?
Partners.
There you go. So anywhere that has strings attached requirements like drug testing or like attending church services, that is going to rule some people out. And if that's the model you're going with, that's valid, and that will cater to a certain community within the larger houseless population, and that's totally fine. Getting really clear on, like, are you looking to house people who are already camping in the neighborhood? Then, like, make your face familiar. Yeah, Jan, go.
Well, that's kind of where I think I was going to try to build on DJ's point and why I was asking the questions earlier about, building relationships. Because I think we sort of have an agenda, but it's kind of cloudy for me because we want to do outreach to get to know people, to establish trust, so that when we say, hey, we're opening a microvillage, what do you think? They might be interested. But on the other hand, we may be having to serve specific people at a microvillage rather than just opening up the doors, both because there is guidance, say, from funding sources to serve people who are people of color or indigenous or LGBTQ plus or fleeing domestic violence. So anyway, there's different subpopulations that have been identified as more in need, more overrepresented and underserved. So it's that mix. So we can't walk up to people and say, hey, we're going to be building a microvillage in your neighborhood, and would you like to move there? Because in fact, we may not be able to offer them a place if they don't fit the right boxes. So it's just trying to puzzle through, how do we establish relationships and build trust and openness toward the idea of a microvillage in this neighborhood when we're not really sure who is going to be able to live there. It's a difficult balance to me.
Yeah, definitely. DJ, did you have something else you wanted to add before I respond?
No, just there's the geography question and the trust question. Those are the two. I mean, are people living in homeless camps just because they have some attachment to that broader place? Is that something that you find this common out there? And if that's not, then maybe getting people to move to a different location would be easier than if that weren't the case.
Yeah. So I would say I don't think people live where they live randomly. There is a reason why they're in that spot, whether it's access to services, whether that's like where their friends were, whether that's a place where they're not going to get swept as much. People are going to go to a place that they're typically a place that they're familiar with, that they're comfortable with, they know how to navigate and get around. It is a little bit the devil, like if they know who lives here, where they can get their needs met in that area, folks are likely, it's also far less traumatizing for folks to like just move, 1 or 2 blocks in any direction than to like pack up and move to another quadrant of the city. So a lot of folks who are camping and have been homeless or camping for a long term will have an area that they're familiar with. And that's kind of their neighborhood. That's their neighborhood. That's their little like part of town. And so I do want to, acknowledge that. What I would say about like the likelihood of success, I think you are extremely likely to find people who want to join these micro villages. I think it would be a good idea to establish a wait list and a screening process ahead of time before you open your doors. I think, looking into what C3PO does, they have, they're like a conscious community where the residents select who they'd like to live with. People do interviews, things like that. And what they have set up right now are 3 camps. They have a camp that is open to anyone. They have 2 affinity camps. One is a queer affinity camp, so anyone who identifies on the LGBTQ spectrum. And then they also have a BIPOC affinity camp. So that's Black, Indigenous, people of color. So anyone who identifies as either wanting to access queer affinity or wanting to access BIPOC affinity can put in an application. They are put on a wait list, and then they do interviews. So as things open, as vacancies open, whoever's next gets called until they find someone who answers, and then they do an interview, and the microvillage or the community will vote together on whether this is a person that feels safe to bring into their community, is willing to like meet the requirements that the community has, the expectations, all of that. So I would suggest developing a process like that and consulting the camp life coordinator that you choose to be a part of that process building. I would also definitely suggest, I know you guys have been chatting with R2D2, but chatting with those folks who are doing similar work and getting really clear on the population that you're serving so that you can establish a wait list. I think the biggest thing about like doing this community building in sort of like in your neighborhoods is making yourselves familiar to people and also like decreasing the amount of fear you may have, getting more comfortable interacting with folks that, you know, society teaches us are scary or taboo. You know, because even if you don't believe people are scary or taboo, when you actually go and try to talk to folks, a lot of times it's like, well, okay, well, here I am, now what? And so kind of like being able to confront that within yourself, get comfortable, will allow you to provide better services and like more loving care to people, to be more comfortable and all of that. So that I think is really important. But you're right, there are going to be those reporting requirements. There are going to be requirements for like, how do we figure out who we're serving and how do we track that data? So those are good things to think about before you get started.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
May I ask, what is C3PO?
Cody, I've talked for 100 years. Do you want to talk about C3PO?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about C3PO actually, other than folks that I know that have been involved with it. So actually, no, I'm gonna hot potato this back to you.
Excellent. So I actually oversee some of the operation work that is involved with C3PO, and we're working on contract transfers and things of that nature. So I'm fairly familiar. But C3PO is stands for creating conscious communities, and there's 3 of them for people living outside. And so in each of those communities, they're doing really similar stuff to what y'all are talking about. They have in-reach, they have laundry, they have showers, they're providing medical care. They're providing the opportunity to connect with mental health services or substance use services, things like that on site. But basically, there are 3 different camps that are located. 1 is downtown in Old Town and 2 are in the Southeast Industrial area. And those are both looking to move to new locations. But they have a lot of the same components that you guys are talking about for the We Shine micro villages. It is villager run. They do have some paid staff members who are not villagers to provide that infrastructure. But also their camps are bigger, much bigger than 6 to 12. The smallest one I think is like 30 something. So yeah.
As a follow-up, Katie, and for Diane's benefit, has C3PO been running long enough that they have some data for moving people coming into the camp and then moving on for placement into permanent housing? Are there any data there for that?
Yes, there is. There are data available. I don't know that. Oh yes, I don't know that that's necessarily accessible for the public, but might be worth a Google search to see. Dave Weaver posted in the chat, we may want to explain the Star Wars pun with R2D2 and C3PO. So they're the 2 little robots that are friends, or droids. I don't know. I'm not the right person to explain it, but they're 2 little buddies in the Star Wars movies. So C3PO is an acronym. R2D2 stands for Right to Dream, which used to be downtown and now is over by the the Rose Quarter, whatever it's called now. And so that's Right to Dream 2, which is why R2D2. Nerd stuff. All right,
Thank
what
you.
else y'all got?
Well, if I can ask one more question, you guys, you just live on contributions, whether it's physical contributions or financial. How can we do that?
It's a lot of work.
Mhm.
Crowdsourcing is a lot of work. As Cody mentioned, both of us work full time. I'm not sure how many hours she's working right now, but I work at least 50 hours a week, and then do this one day a week, volunteer style. And I have a lot of other community things that I'm involved in. So it's time consuming to raise funds. It's time consuming to do social media and that kind of engagement. And one thing that has been really helpful has been establishing relationships with community members who often don't really know how to help, but would like to. And so having we don't really love Amazon. We have a lot of problems with them, but it's really easy for someone in, for example, Vermont, to send me a case of peanuts through Amazon, or to send, a bundle of socks from Maine. We also have folks who, like at tax season, we just got a contribution in yesterday from the mother of a friend of mine who passed away, and every year she donates her tax return, a significant portion of her tax return, to us in his memory. And so we'll buy supplies and hand those out. But what has been really helpful is having people who make small monthly contributions. And we talk about this in mutual aid circles about how do we budget for sustainable giving. I know you guys have Cindy Comfer doing some financial and fundraising consultation for you guys, and they are incredible. But one of the things that we have learned over time through working with other fundraising folks and just from our experience is that the people who donate $10 a month really keep us going in ways that people who donate $100 one time don't. Because we can't count on that $100, but we can count on that $10. And one way that, Cody and I both practice sustainable giving in our lives as well. So we have agencies and projects that we give to. One thing that I do is that on the day that I send out my bills, I have automatic transfers scheduled to like the Trans Women of Color Collective, the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, all of these different projects, as well as mutual aid, like grassroots organizations like ours that are not 501c3s. And I just have like $5, $10, $20 goes out every month. I don't even miss it. And by the end of the year, I've donated thousands of dollars that I don't miss to people who are going to put it to way better use than I would. So that's one way that I like to talk to people about sustainable giving, is like, it's great to make a pledge. It's great to, everyone wants to donate at the holidays, and that's lovely. That's where most social service agencies, most nonprofit work, and us, like, we get our supplies, the majority of our supplies for the year. And so then we have to budget those out. Since we come from an abundance mindset, we have to work all year round to get the finances to cover things. So, folks were hitting us up when they got their stimulus payments to be like, hey, I'd like to give you guys $50 or whatever. People in recovery, a lot of us make financial amends for wrongs done, whether that, whatever that looks like. And so over my years of being in recovery, I've had fellows who sent us like 1% of their income every month for a year, something like that. And that was like how they paid their debt to society, or how they paid for things that were otherwise unreconcilable for them, that they owed. And we just have all sorts of folks contributing in all sorts of ways. And it's really wonderful. And they need reminders. So social media is
Well,
helpful for us.
how do I do that? That's a good way to do things. I
Yeah,
do
so-
that with lots of nonprofit. How do I do that?
For us or for y'all?
Yeah.
For you guys.
We'll send out information on how to donate to us, but we accept in-kind donations. We accept Amazon wish list deliveries. You can drop stuff off on my porch or my mom's porch. Someone dropped off like 12 cases of popcorn on her porch, came and got them. We've been passing those out ever since. It's quite a hit. We accept Cash App and Venmo donations. And and we're always available for emails if you're like, hey, I suddenly have a case of cloth diapers that are really nice. Is that something you could use for outreach? We're going to say probably not, but I can tell you where to take them. So we do a lot of like Q&A stuff like that. And a lot of folks asking like, how do I start something like this in my neighborhood or my community? So that's something that we really love about doing this work, is getting to like answer these questions and getting to share like, hey, we don't really know what we're doing, but we're figuring it out. And here's what we've figured out thus far.
So
I see a bunch of people coming off.
to send us information on how to do everything, okay?
Yeah.
And then I am hoping that We Shine will do the same, send out information on how we
Yes.
can donate, all right? Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
We will.
okay, I hope I'm finished with all my annoying questions.
Diane, you're wonderful. Thanks, DJ, for joining us. And please let us know if you have any more questions or follow up, okay?
I will.
Diane, thank you so much for all your engagement. You're not annoying at all. It's great to hear from you. Cody, did you have something you wanted to say also?
Yeah, just about funding. So just because when we started Feed the People PDX, we were thinking about creating it in the and registering it as a 501c3 because the door is open for funding in a massive way once it's a 501c3. A lot of local businesses want to donate to nonprofits that are officially 501c3s because it's a tax write-off. It helps everyone. At the time that we started this, I had just started graduate school, and Katie was working an absurd schedule with a new gig, and so we didn't really have the means to open up and register it as a 501c3. So we've been really scrappy and really frugal in ways that you will not need to. That We Shine, absolutely, it's a headache that you will not have to endure. But I just want to echo what Katie was saying. It's just that building community and that communication, either through social media, through emails, through just conversations on the fly, just in person when we interact in person at some point again in the future. Like these are ways that we're able to communicate about what is available, and as Katie said, people want to get involved and don't necessarily have the time to go out and do street outreach with us, but can give us $5 or $10 a month or something. Just the connection and building that community and getting people familiar with what's around, is a big thing. Getting your name known and getting like people aware of what you offer and what the project represents is going to be such a massive step up. And again, connecting with local resources, local businesses, is a big one for sure. But anyway, yeah, that's one thing. That's one obstacle that we've had that I think that you will not have to think about as much. But obviously, connecting with communities is just as important for you as it is for us.
Yeah.
We'll send out for Katie and Cody information about how to donate to them. Yeah, I'm getting help here.
Oh.
Okay. Well, it sounds like this has been so great, and it's really helped my thinking about outreach and how to approach it. So I really appreciate it and hope we can call on you all again in future. And
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm just so proud of these two and the work that they've done. It's just pretty amazing. I'd like to adopt Cody. I'm not sure that he wants to be adopted yet. But
I mean, I'm sure we could arrange something.
Her allegiance can be bought.
Sounds like you just need to feed her, Chris.
Honestly, that's all it takes. That's all it takes. Just keep those steaks coming.
Done.
Okay, well, great. Well, we have other trainings in mind for our group and we hope that it'll keep growing and we'll get more people online when we're doing this. So thanks again for your time today and we'll be back in touch with all of you. So-
Wonderful. We would love to make ourselves available for follow-up. If you guys have questions, I will post our email in the chat right now so you can copy and paste it if you'd like to. We're not super responsive to email, but I try. And you can also reach us through Chris. So let me type that in there. If you do have Instagram, you can follow us at Feed the People PDX. And if you don't have Instagram, but you have Facebook, I sometimes will post our posts to Facebook when I remember. I'm not on there really, so I'll post them so that other people can share them. But we are reachable. We're happy to chat. And if you want to have a follow-up check-in to answer questions that come up between now and, whenever y'all get rolling a little bit more, we would definitely be open to checking in.
Great.
And we answer emails for free. Just not very fast.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
I
you
guess-
all for
I
coming.
guess we'll see you all soon.
Thank you guys so much for doing this and being willing to work with your community in this way. It's super cool.
Yeah, and thanks for having us. It's such an inspiring project. So keep us informed and keep us connected. We'd love to help out in any way we can.
We will. Thank you. All right,
All
good
right.
night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.